and gives you the clarity, you are not what you think. You are not what you are thinking as you. Be very clear, Kshana means the gap between one thought and the other thought. It is not second. So, now you need to understand the circle. This is the NS, neutral space. Nithyananda Swami. This is the NS, neutral space. This is the incoming breath. This is the outgoing breath. For you to understand, I expressed this as more space and this as less space. But Shiva says, this is equivalent to this. Because the gap between one thought and the other thought is Kshana. Gap between this thought and this thought is what he calls as Kshana. And he says further, whether you give your attention or not, this space and this space, the NS, the neutral space and the incoming breath, both spaces are equal. But we think this is more because we give too much of attention to it. Even if you give too much of attention to it, this is not more. Let me give you one small example. If you are sitting with somebody with whom you feel completely comfortable, in tune, you are just relaxed, even if 2-3 hours passed, you will not know how time flies. Suddenly you realize, oh God, it is already 8 o'clock, I have to run, I have so much of work. Otherwise, if you are sitting with somebody with whom you don't feel comfortable or with whom you don't feel relaxed, every 5 minutes what you will do? You will see the watch and you will say, what is happening, whether my watch stopped or not? Don't you have any other work? If the number of thoughts are more, it is hell. If number of thoughts are less, you are in heaven. Be very clear, if number of thoughts are more, chronologically same time, but psychologically you feel time is more. Because you give more attention here, you think you have more thoughts here, you think this space is more than neutral space. The breathing space, breathing time is more than the neutral space. Please understand. Because you think you are having more thoughts, because you think you are interested in thinking, because you believe you are interested in thinking, because you give more emphasis on your identity, you may think the incoming breath time and the outgoing breath time is more than the neutral space, but in reality it is not. It is just psychological game. The Kshana of this and Kshana of this is one and the same. Kshana of this, Kshana of this time, the way in which your mind moves. Because you are having too many number of thoughts, you think this space is more. But in reality, this space is not more. One more thing, how you miss the depth of this space. Here also you have identity, means incoming breath space. Outgoing breath. Here also you have identity. Here also you have identity. Identity is the space which you know. Here you don't have identity. The big problem is, when there is an identity, you are able to connect and see all the identities. You connect and see. Let me be very clear. Let me give you in this way. This is the incoming breath. This is the outgoing. This is again incoming. This is NS, neutral space. This is neutral space. Because here your identity exists, is again outgoing. It's again outgoing. NS, neutral space, neutral space. Here your identity exists. Here also your identity exists. Your identity exists in this space. Constantly you can connect and see you are connected. But in this gap, because your identity doesn't exist, you don't connect the gaps and see. For example, the thought which came to you 10 minutes ago, the thought which came to you 10 years ago, thought which came to you 20 years ago, they are independent, unclutched, separate thoughts. But thoughts have got identity. Because they have identity, you connect them and see the thought which happened 10 minutes ago is number 1. Thought which happened 1 year ago, number 2. Thought which happened 10 years ago is number 3. You can connect all of them because they have identity. But the gap which happened 10 minutes ago, the gap which happened 1 year ago, the gap which happened 10 years ago, you don't connect them and see that you are constantly experiencing gaps. The suffering, the depression which you had 10 years ago, the depression which you suffered 7 years ago, the depression which you suffered 3 years ago, the depression which you had yesterday, all of them are independent, individual, unconnected thoughts. But because they are thoughts, you start connecting all of them and create the shaft of depression. You have an idea that your life is depression. For last 10 years, I am suffering with depression, Swamiji. You create a big shaft. You take all these unconnected, unclutched pieces. Each bit is an unclutched bit. You just take all the unclutched bits. You connect all the shaft and create a shaft. If it is a pain shaft, you try to break it. If it is a joy shaft, you try to increase it. You don't understand, you can neither break the shaft nor elongate the shaft because this shaft doesn't exist. Whether you see it or not, it is pure imaginary shaft. It is pure imaginary shaft.